start with their quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater last year played with the Saints, and this year he's signed to a 3-year contract with the Carolina Panthers. Now, there's not a whole lot of trust I've heard or seen around the fantasy football community with Teddy Bridgewater, but I think he produced pretty well last year. Being in the Saints, he played 9 games, had a pretty good completion rate, and a lot of people expect Teddy Bridgewater to rush around and not throw the ball as much, but he threw for 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, and he only ran 28 times for 31 yards. So overall, I think he has what you need in a quarterback, and maybe just working on their accuracy and keeping those balls into a short passes and letting his receivers do the work needed. We're going to see – I think we're going to see a great producing Teddy Bridgewater, especially with DJ Moore and the weapons around him. I think we can see a great Teddy Bridgewater this year. What about you?
Yeah, I do agree. I'm just thinking through like the course of his career. He hasn't had a full opportunity to really take over a team, and I don't even know if that's the case here. They still have Kyle Allen, who produced and did. He had a pretty decent season. For the situation given, but they did finish 4th in the division with 5-11 record. So we'll see how Teddy does. He has around a 65 to 67% completion rating on average. So that should be good. And also you have Christian McCaffrey, coming from the Saints offense into the Panthers offense. It's not too crazy of an adjustment. You come from having Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray to having Christian McCaffrey, who is 2 NFL running backs in his own,
Yeah,
So with him having Christian McCaffrey, the receiver and running back, accumulating over 2,300 scrimmage yards out of the 5,469 yards that they produced on offense last year, he's in good hands. And DJ Moore, who had 4 touchdowns, over 1,100 yards, 87 receptions. Curtis Samuel, 6 touchdowns. These are some good pieces. Now they have Robbie Anderson. So it'll be interesting to see how he does take over the team, because he's going to have to – I don't know what the Panthers defense is going to do. I know they have a new defensive coordinator in Derek Brown. They're going to be switching to a 4-3 defense instead of a 3-4. So the defensive situation is going to affect, Teddy Bridgewater, because he's not going to have room for error the way that he could have had in New Orleans, So we'll see what he does. I think that he is a reliable quarterback, but I just don't know within the division that he's in. I don't know if he's going to be able to carry a team through the Bucks and the Falcons, and so
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, I think you're on something with that. I think reliable is one aspect, but producing, and I don't think we're gonna get this monster season from Teddy Bridgewater. I don't think he's gonna come in and throw for 5,000 yards or get 7 touchdowns and go off like that. Like, I think he'll do what's needed for these receivers and Christian McCaffrey to produce, and then just let them take it. I mean, there's plenty of weeks last year where Kyle Allen was looking like a number 1 quarterback to put on your team, yet it really wasn't him. All he had to do was let Christian McCaffrey grab it from 5 yards out and run it in for a touchdown. And so I think Teddy Bridgewater could take full advantage of that. Maybe you could even stream him from a couple weeks in the year and use it to your advantage. But overall, you're really relying on those key offensive weapons, like the number 1 player in fantasy. And let's talk about him, Christian McCaffrey. I mean, he's been tearing it up in fantasy. This kid from Stanford is now the number 1 ranked running back in all formats, standard and running back. And overall, he finished number 1 overall in PPR. and number 2 in standard leagues. The only one close to him was Lamar Jackson, which like people make the comparison that he is a running back, but I mean we saw what he did last year as a quarterback. Anyways, as a running back to tear it up, not only in a rushing for 1,300 yards.
13,000 yards.
Yeah,
New
exactly.
record.
13,000 yards, Christian McCaffrey. You heard it here first. No, 1,387 yards and 15 touchdowns last year. And then 1,005 yards receiving with 4 touchdowns. I mean, it's insane. It's great. He's the number 1 running back, not only in fantasy, but in the league, in my opinion. And so he's obviously the 101 in fantasy, and we can continue to rely on him. They did have a head coach change from Ron Rivera to Matt Rule, but even Matt Rule has said that they're still going to be using Christian McCaffrey as a featured piece in the offense, and they want to be able to use the team and attack in many different ways and using him effectively. So we might even see Christian McCaffrey just line up in the slot or line up in the far end and be that wide receiver that we all want him to be. And I think they're going to still continue to use him effectively. He's going to run through defenses and use his swole biceps to, like, push people over. I mean, the dude is ripped. And I think if you're going to get in his way, you better be ready to get knocked down.
Yeah.
What about you, Norris?
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey, he is impeccable. Like, it's incredible to watch. One thing I think about is Reggie Bonifant being in that number 2 spot. He has no worries. Just show up to practice, just be on time. So that way, if Christian McCaffrey happens to get thirsty, give him a little bit of water. If he needs a break, just go in. We're not even going to run. We're just going to throw. But yeah, it's interesting to see Christian McCaffrey perform the way that he does consistently, because like you mentioned, like in his collegiate career, it was like this. And for the people, fun fact, so in our league that we're in together, we're in a dynasty league. I initially had Christian McCaffrey, drafted him, and then I was foolish and I gave him to my friend here, Jason, and then he followed in my steps and sent Christian McCaffrey away and has not touched him ever since. So we've been on this journey of trying to get him back on our teams some type of way, but it's a joy to watch Christian McCaffrey do what he does anyway, even if I'm not getting the points in my league.
Right, and I can tell you from my own experience, I've had several running backs on that dynasty team. I mean, I've had Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara. I have Austin Eckler, and I'm glad I still have him. I put so many different running backs on that team over the last couple of years, and I still cannot get my hands on getting Christian McCaffrey back. And I mean, if there's somebody who's mastered the art of trading, it's definitely me. And I still can't seem to convince Josh, who was here on our last video, to give me back Christian McCaffrey in any sense of the term. So I guess I got to just draft the next best thing and try and find the next Christian McCaffrey coming into the league and keep him forever.
10 years later, that'll happen in 10 years, maybe.
Maybe. But, like, that's the thing with Christian McCaffrey is he's the number 1 choice on this offense. To see a running back not only be the number 1 choice in rushing, but in receiving as well. But let's talk about who was the number 2 choice and made up the other half of the yards this year, and DJ Moore. And DJ Moore, he finished as top 5 in receiving yards and had 135 targets, which is great, and 87 receptions for 1,175 yards. Now, he finished 16th overall in PPR leagues, and I think that's mostly due to his touchdown number. With only 4 touchdowns on the year, he had an amazing amount of targets and a great amount of catches, but we would love to see that touchdown number go up, and I think there's no room for it to go down, hopefully. So I think there's more of a chance for him to impress and impress us and continue to grow. as a wide receiver.
Yeah, and with the addition to Robbie Anderson, I don't believe that Robbie Anderson is going to be the guy to apply the pressure for the number one spot. But I agree, for him to have 135 targets to his 87 receptions, that touchdown number indeed has to go up if we want to, move DJ Moore into the top tier conversation of fantasy wide receivers. Because honestly, when Cam Newton was healthy, I definitely had confidence in DJ Moore. He's incredibly talented. He has the route running down. He has the hands. He's not a possession receiver, but he doesn't disappoint, consistently. So my confidence in him is still shaky. And Teddy Bridgewater honestly doesn't help the situation. As far as my confidence in DJ Moore. Again, he did what he did with some of Cam Newton and majority of Kyle Allen. So we'll see how it works, because we might end up in a situation where we're looking at Teddy Bridgewater take, maybe 70% of snaps at the quarterback position while Kyle Allen is doing his thing as well. So, I mean, it worked for New Orleans, and, starting to hear conversations throughout the league of different teams maybe at least entertaining the thought of a 2-quarterback system. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happened this year with the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, and we'll definitely see. I think, like you said, I've also heard a lot of things of different two quarterback teams. And, we can definitely see how the quarterbacks are going to be lining up in Carolina. I think I personally love DJ Moore. I think the more the better. The more the merrier, they say. And I definitely want DJ Moore. And I think overall he takes the short targets and makes them big. And he continues. I mean, he tore it up last year and he finished 16th basically on yards. I mean, you take away the 4 touchdowns and he still put up 1,100 yards. And I think he'll continue to bruise those numbers, because we've seen last year him go from a quarterback like Cam Newton to Kyle Allen to Will Grier, and even the year before that, going from Cam Newton to whoever they had throwing after Cam Newton got injured. I mean, just he hasn't had this number one quarterback staying like that, and I don't think that's something he will have this year either, like you mentioned. But I think he has a better opportunity with Teddy Bridgewater throwing him those short passes and letting him run it up.
Yeah, and I think from 2018, DJ Moore had 55. Yeah, 55 receptions, and for him to go to 87, that's great. But we only saw a 2 touchdown difference in those 32, receptions. So it's an interesting ratio. I mean, maybe it's not a huge concern because, again, if he's on your fantasy team, he shouldn't be your number one wide receiver on your starting squad. I don't think that he should be your number one guy unless you have a Christian McCaffrey or an Alvin Kamara, somebody that's going to make up for that in a different position. I just don't see that for DJ Moore. But yeah.
Definitely interesting take. I think he could finish the year top tier wide receiver 1 within the top 10. And I do have the confidence to put him as a wide receiver 1 on my team. Let me run some names past you and see who would you rather have as your wide receiver 1. DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. DJ Moore, Robert Woods.
DJ Moore.
DJ Moore or Brandon Cooks.
DJ Moore.
DJ Moore, wow.
Yeah.
Last one. DJ Moore or Chris Godwin.
Chris Godwin, all the way. Especially this year.
Okay.
And honestly, the Robert Woods one is a toss-up. You could go either way because that's debatable. Robert Woods had a strong finish in the second half of last year. So
definitely. And he's a consistent wide receiver. And that's what you want at the wide receiver position. Somebody's going to give you more than 10 points a game. That's Robert Woods.
Yeah.
So some more key players to mention on the Carolina offense. You have, like we mentioned, Robbie Anderson. You have Curtis Samuel. You also have Ian Thomas. Funny thing, when I was researching the Carolina Panthers, I just thought, you know what, they probably just got rid of the tight end position. They probably just put Reggie Bonifant in for a second, let him play as tight end, let him get some opportunity on the offense. But no, it's Ian Thomas. Ian Thomas is a young guy, and I think we'll see that he can make it himself known this year. And Teddy Bridgewater likes to target the tight end, so Ian Thomas might be something to look at. But I definitely want to be drafting him even in the late rounds. There's so much depth at tight end this year that you could go somewhere else and actually have a lot more production. So that with that, the Carolina, anything more you want to add about the Panthers?
Nah. Oh, I do actually. With the loss of Eric Reed and Luke Kuechly, we're gonna have to find out what they do on the defensive side, because that's huge gaps, that can't be filled in 1 year unless you go after, superstar players of those positions. But just one note about the Carolina Panthers.
For sure. I mean, and they have Kawan Short at their defensive end, and then they have Brian Burns, which we saw him do great, Shaq Thompson. So they have that linebacker core pretty much lined up where they need to be without Kuechly. But, I mean, like, those are two major pieces, Kuechly and Eric Reed being gone. So we'll see how those holes are filled. I mean, they have players like Dante Jackson and Trey Boston in their secondaries. And I think we can definitely see some production out of their defense, but we'll definitely see if they can hold off major offensives like the ones in their own division.
Yeah, they have 14 interceptions total on defense, and the names you mentioned of Dante Jackson, Trey Boston, plus James Bradbury, they all tied for 3 last year. But out of those 2 players that we mentioned, and then we'll, move on to the Tampa Bay Bucks, but Luke Kuechly and Eric Reed accounted for 274 tackles.
Jeez.
And so Luke Kuechly had 144. He had 81 solo tackles out of that. Eric Reed, out of his 130, had 97 solo tackles. That's open field situations that could put Teddy Bridgewater in a playing from behind position. And even though he only threw 2 interceptions last year, we know that he wasn't starting, every game. So it's just an interesting situation for them.
Definitely. Well, that's a team to keep your eye on, because they can either do extremely well or flop out entirely. And I wouldn't be surprised if they finish somewhere around the same that they did last year, maybe a little bit better. But overall, I do have some confidence in Teddy Bridgewater and the offense as a whole with the weapons they have. So I could see them, I don't know, maybe finishing 8-8.
They were 5-11. They were 5-11. I don't. They have the 18th hardest schedule, so they might be in an okay position to win 3 more games than they did last year. But I wouldn't put them above placing 3rd in that division. They'll probably still end up being 4th or 3rd. So,
thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell. You can follow us on Instagram at The Flash Fantasy and listen to our podcast on any of your podcast apps.